Welcome back, in part 9 of PlayStation. Anyways, let's continue. Released in 1994, the PlayStation Control Pad was the first controller made for the original PlayStation.
It featured a basic design of a D-pad, 4 main select buttons, green triangle, red circle / red O. Blue cross / blue X, and pig square, and start and select buttons on the face.
Shoulder buttons are also featured on the top. L1, L2, R1, R2, named by the side. L equals left, R equals right, and 1 and 2, top and bottom.
In 1996, Sony released the PlayStation Analog Joystick for use with flight simulation games.
The original digital controller was then replaced by the dual analog in 1997, which added 2 analog sticks, based on the same potentiometer technology as the analog joystick.
This controller was then also succeeded by the DualShock controller.
The PlayStation controller SCPH-1010 in Japan, SCPH-1080 overseas, is the first gamepad released by Sony Computer Entertainment for its PlayStation home video game console. Based on the basic button configuration established with Nintendo's Super NES controller, the PlayStation controller added a second pair of shoulder buttons for the middle fingers.
Intending to update the gamepad for navigating 3D environments such as the ones PlayStation was designed to generate. The concept behind featuring shoulder buttons for both the index and middle fingers was to implement two-way directional depth controls using 2 sets of buttons.
To compensate for the less stable grip from shifting the middle finger's placement to the shoulders, grip handles were added to the controller. Using the simple geometric shapes of a green triangle, a red circle, a blue cross, and a pink square, triangle, circle, cross, square. To label its action buttons rather than traditionally used letters or numbers, the PlayStation controller established a trademark, which would be incorporated heavily into the PlayStation brand.
In an interview with T.U. Godo, designer of the original PlayStation controller, he explained what the symbols mean. The circle and cross represent yes and no, respectively. As common in Japanese culture, which explains their common use as confirm and cancel in most Japanese PlayStation games and are placed similarly to the and B buttons on the Super NES controller, which have similar functions. The triangle symbolizes a point of view and the square is equated to a sheet of paper there to be used to access menus.
In Western releases, the circle and cross functions are often reversed. Circle to cancel, cross to confirm or reassign to a different button, cross to confirm, triangle to cancel. The PlayStation 2 console is backwards compatible with the original PlayStation controller as it uses the same connector and protocol as the original PlayStation console, due to the console's backward compatibility with original PlayStation peripherals.
However, functionality is limited with many PS2 games due to its lack of analog sticks and pressure-sensitive buttons.
Ken Tsutorashi recounted the designing of the controller.
In development, we simulated every possible joypad situation. We imagined what it would be like to have to continually put the pad down while mapping a game or playing while lying on the floor, and many other cases. After that, we had to decide on the weight of the buttons and the pad itself. We adjusted the weights 1 gram at a time and eventually we found the correct balance. We probably spent as much time on the joypad's development as we did on the body of the machine.
Both Godo and Tsutorashi recalled that Sony President Norio Oda showed a special interest in the development of the controller and strongly supported the final version.
The original version, Model SCPH-1010, was released alongside the PlayStation on 3 December 1994 in Japan.
When the PlayStation was launched in North America and Europe on the 9th and 29th of September 1995 respectively, the controller was slightly retooled to meet the needs of the Western market, and came with a revised version of the PlayStation controller, Model SCPH 1080, for their respective launch models in those regions.
This version is 10% larger than the original version in Japan, presumably to account for the differences in hand size among Eastern and Western people.
It has a longer cord with a ferrite bead and was bundled with all subsequent PlayStation consoles afterwards.
This iteration of the controller was later released in Japan on 2 April 1996.
After briefly selling the dual analog controller in 1997, Sony began phasing out the PlayStation controller later that year with the introduction of the DualShock controller, which would become the new standard controller for the PlayStation from that point onwards.
The first game to explicitly require the use of DualShock and dual analog controllers, Ape Escape, would not come out until 2 years after the DualShock's initial release.
The PlayStation Analog Joystick, SCPH 1110, is Sony's first analog controller for the PlayStation, and is the precursor to the PlayStation Dual Analog controller.
It is often incorrectly referred to as the Sony Flight Stick, not to be confused with the Flight Stick line of joysticks for PlayStation consoles by third-party peripheral manufacturer Hori.
Announced to the public in August 1995, the analog joystick was released to the public in Japan on 26 April 1996. The analog joystick used potentiometer technology previously used on consoles such as the Vectrex. Instead of relying on binary 8-way switches, the controller can detect minute angular changes through the entire range of motion.
The stick also features a thumb-operated digital hat switch on the right joystick, corresponding to the traditional D-pad, and used for instances when simple digital movements were necessary.
A compatibility mode for the analog joystick was included in the dual analog controller, Sony's first analog revision of its original gamepad design. PS1 games that support the analog joystick have an analog joystick compatible icon on the back cover. The analog joystick has a switch to select either analog or digital mode.
When in the digital mode, both sticks function as the gamepad on the regular PS1 controller.
Older PS1 games that do not support the PS1 DualShock sticks can work with the analog joystick. List of games with analog joystick support. PlayStation: Ace Combat 2, Ace Combat 3, Adidas Power Soccer 98, Apocalypse, Armored Trooper Bottoms, Japan, Armorins, Project Swarm, Asteroids. Atari Anniversary Edition Redux, Atari Collection 2, Paperboy, Road Blasters, Marvel Madness, ATV Racers, Batman, Gotham City Racer, Bogey Dead 6, Japan at Sidewinder/Europe as Raging Skies. Released at the same time as the analog joystick, Crash Bandicoot, Warped, Castle Honda Superbike Racing, Centipede, Car and Driver Grand Tour Racing 98, Coro Q-Jet, Rainbow Wings, Japan, Colony Wars, Colony Wars, Vengeance, Siberia, Descent, Descent Maximum, Digital Glider Airman, Japan, Elemental Gear Bolt, EOS, Edge of Sky High, Japan, Formula 198, Galaxian 3, Japan and Europe. Gran Turismo 2, Gunship 2000, Japan, Independence Day, Iron Soldier 3, Macross Digital Mission VFX, Japan, Macross Digital Mission VFX 2, Japan, MDK. Mech Warrior 2, 31st Century Combat, Metal Gear Solid, Michael Owen's World League Soccer 99, Arcade's Greatest Hits, the Midway Collection 2, Used in Blaster, Missile Command, Motor Toon Grand Prix 2, known as Motor Toon Grand Prix in North America. Namco Museum Volume 4, Assault and Assault Plus Only, NASCAR 98, Need for Speed 2, Newman/Haas Racing, Nightmare Creatures, Panzer Front, known in Japanese, Hepburn, Camps of Firanto. Pitfall 3D, Beyond the Jungle, Porsche Challenge, Project Baby Array, Japan, Quake 2, Racing Lagoon, Japan, Ray Crisis, Rise 2, Resurrection, R/C Stunt Copter, Scars, Sled Storm, Shadow Master, Sidewinder 2, Slamscope, Spuro 2, Ripto's Rage, known as Spuro 2, Gateway to Glimmer in Australia and Europe, Spuro, Year of the Dragon, Spuro the Dragon, Starfighter, Star Diction, Star Wars, Demolition, Steel Ring, Supercross 2000, Siphon Filter 2, Siphon Filter 3, Test Drive 4, only supported in MTSCU and PAL versions, Test Drive, Off-Road 3. TFX, Tactical Fighter Experiment, The Need for Speed, supports digital mode only, the Operation Deathwing, Treasures of the Deep, U.S. Navy Fighters, Vehicle Cavalier, Japan. Zelda Senki, Tsukasa no Kanshu, Vigilante 8, Wing Commander 4, The Price of Freedom, Wing Over 2, Excess Moto, and Zero Pilot, Japan.
And PlayStation 2. R-Type Final, both analog and digital mode, and XG3, Extreme G Racing, both analog and digital mode.
There are other PS2 games that also can use the PS1 analog joystick, but only in digital mode.
Metal Slug Anthology, Gradius 3, Gradius 4 and other games that normally use just the gamepad and buttons for controls.
The following games support the controller's analog mode, but force the player to use the digital hat switch instead of the analog sticks. 007, Tomorrow Never Dies, 007, The World Is Not Enough, Colony Wars, Red Sun, Crash Team Racing, Echo Knight, video game. FIFA 99, FIFA 2000, FIFA 2001, Klonoa, NHL 98, Starblade Alpha, Street Fighter Alpha 3, and Strike Point. And the following games are fully supported, but have issues that can affect gameplay. Ape Escape, the lack of L3 and R3 buttons on the controller makes some sections unplayable.
Tempest X3 works fully, but the game is set to auto-fire with the analog joystick connected.
And World's Scariest Police Chases, the game will not recognize the analog sticks unless a DualShock is connected first and then replaced with a controller. GamePro's Raptor praised the controller for its comfort, tight control, button layout, and analog movement, though he expressed doubt that most players would go for it given the high price tag. The analog joystick did not sell well in Japan, reportedly due to its high cost and bulky size. The analog joystick can be connected to a PC via a USB adapter and also via a DirectPad Pro-style parallel port interface, which can be accessed under Windows using the DirectPad or other drivers.
The Allegro library provides the same functionality for developers.
The PlayStation Mouse is an input device for the PlayStation.
The mouse was released in Japan on December 3, 1994, the launch date of the PlayStation.
The mouse is a simple two-button ball mouse that plugs directly into the PlayStation controller port without adapters or conversions and is a fully supported Sony accessory.
It was packaged along with a mouse mat bearing the PlayStation logo.
The mouse is mainly used in point-and-click adventures, strategy games, simulation games, and visual novels.
In later years, first-person shooters, which made use of the peripheral to aim the player's view in the same manner as similar games on the PC were released.
It is also used by the arcade light gun shooting game Area 51 as an aiming device instead of a light gun compatibility. A special Konami-branded edition of the mouse was released alongside the Japanese exclusive title Tokimeki Memorial, Forever With You.
Mouse packs for Disney's Winnie the Pooh Kindergarten and Disney's Winnie the Pooh Preschool were also released exclusively in Japan.
List of games compatible with a PlayStation mouse. A Mandarin, A Train, Act 2 A Pool, Alien Resurrection, A Merzone, The Explorer's Legacy, Arcade's Greatest Hits, The Atari Collection 1, Arcade's Greatest Hits, The Atari Collection 2, Arcade Party Pack, R, Mo Core, Mo Mamoru, Area 51, Arkanoid Returns, Arc of Time, Arthur to a Steer-Off known as a Mekimura, Incredible Tunes. Atari Anniversary Edition, Atlantis, The Lost Tales, Aztec, The Curse, In the Heart of the City of Gold, Backgammon, Maldives, Bedlam, Blockage, Breakout, Breakthrough, Broken Sword, The Shadow of the Templars, Broken Sword 2, The Smoking Mirror, Cat the Ripper, Shiazan no Tankaishi, Chaos Control, Chibi Maruko-chan, Maruko Nikki World, China, The Forbidden City, Chronicles of the Sword, City Bravo, Clock Tower, The First Fear, Clock Tower, Clock Tower 2, The Struggle Within, Command and Conquer, Red Alert, Command and Conquer, Red Alert Retaliation, Constructor, Siberia, TaBNWNE 2, Master Compact, TaBNWNE 2, Player Spirit, Dark Seed, Denjeki Construction, Ashishiras, Examine Plus, Die Hard Trilogy 2, Viva Las Vegas, Discworld 2, Missing Presumed, Discworld Moi, Disney's Winnie the Pooh Kindergarten, Disney's Winnie the Pooh Preschool, Doki Doki Shutter Chance, Docuzy 2, Dracula, The Resurrection, Dracula 2, The Last Sanctuary, Doom 2000, Ego no Tetsujin, Center Shiken Trial, Izimijin 2, Izimijin 3, Egypt 1156 BC, Tomb of Assyria, Egypt 2, The Heliopolis Prophecy, Elemental Gear Volt, Final Doom, Front Mission Alternative, Election 3, Game No Taxogen 2, Game No Taxogen, The Shanghai, Gekanai no Kishi, Horizon, Dual Panic, Global Domination, Go to Professional Take You Ego, Gotha 2, Tenkyu no Kishi, Hatsukoi Valentine Special. Help Charity Compilation, Henry Explorers, Huma Underline, with Paint Maker, Irritating Stick, Jellyfish, The Healing Friend, Jigsaw Madness, Jigsaw World, Jingle Cats, Love Parade Zakuzan no Maki, Tattoo Hifumi Kyuden, Shoji Club, Kiva 898 Akifayu, Kiva 899 Haru Natsu, Kiva Seisho no House at Year 96 Volume 1, Kiva Seisho no House at Year 96 Volume 2, G1 Road, Kiva Seisho no House at Year 97 Volume 1, Mary Pandukin, Kiva Seisho no House at Year 97 Volume 2. To hit, Kiva Seisho no House at Year 99 Akifayu, Checken, Marriage, Clayman, The Mystery of the Neverhood, Koten Sugashu, Shijin no Kan, For You Sangityu Enji, Las Vegas Dream 2. Lemmings and No, More Lemmings, Lemmings 3D, Louder, The Final Curse, Lucifer, Lulu, Lupin 3, Chateau de Cagliostro Seike, Meguri A-Shite, Made Up PH List, Gamma X 2097, Mighty Hits Special. Mist 1 2, Mobile Suit Gundam, Perfect 1 Year War, Monopoly, Murian 3, Chicken Case, Murian 2, Jet Wider, Murian X, MTV Music Generator, Mist, My Disney Kitchen, Necronomicon, The Dawning of Darkness, Neo Planet, Neorude 2, Neorude, Kazama Manchu, Oyazama Express, Oracle no Houski, Jewels of the Oracle, Osaka Neo Matenro, Perfect Assassin, Player Manager 99, Police Knox, Premier Manager 98, Premier Manager 99, Premier Manager 2000, Prisoner of Ice, Prison Land Story, Reject, Horned Owl, Pucci Terra, Quake 2, Quantum Gate 1, Akumi no Jashu, Railroad Tycoon 2, Rescue Shot, Risk, Raiden, the sequel to Myst, RPG Maker, Sakamoto Ryuma, Ishin Keikutyu, Sentinel Returns, Seraphim Shanghai, Henry no Xiaoju, Shanghai, Great Moments, Shanghai, True Valor, Shipsy Taoshin Gaiford, Crown Keimetsu Sakuzan, Silverload, SimCity 2000, Snatcher, Spin Jam, Starblade Alpha, Syndicate Wars, Takuramikan, Tempest X3, Tangasiha, Tenshidami, Team Aquarium, Time Crisis, Tokimeki Memorial, Forever With You, Tokimeki Memorial 2, Tokimeki Memorial Drama Series, Volume 1, Nijiro no Saizen, Tokimeki Memorial Drama Series, Volume 2, Iridori no Love Song, Tokimeki Memorial Selection, Fujisaki Shiori, Transport Tycoon, Ubik, Versailles, A Game of Intrigue, Virtual Pool, Voice Paradise Excella, Warhammer, Dark Omen, Warzone 2100, XCOM, UFO Defense, XCOM, Terror from the Deep, and Z. analog controller, SCPH 1150 in Japan, SCPH 1180 in the United States, and SCPH 1180 in Europe. Is Sony's first handheld analog controller for the PlayStation, and the predecessor to the DualShock. The first analog controller was the PlayStation Analog Joystick, SCPH 1110.
It was also the first controller in the PlayStation family of video game consoles to support force feedback in games, but only on the Japanese market controller. This functionality was later implemented in the DualShock, which was released internationally.
The dual analog controller was first displayed under glass at the PlayStation Expo 96-97, which was held from 1 November to 4 November 1996.
It was released in Japan on 25 April 1997, coincident with the Japanese release of vibration and analog-capable title Total 2.
Bushido Blade, another title fully compatible with a controller, had been released previously in March. Before its release in the United States, Sony decided that vibration feedback would be removed from the European and American versions of the controller.
According to a Sony spokesperson, we evaluated all the features and decided, for manufacturing reasons, that what was most important to gamers was the analog feature.
Reasons for dropping the vibration feedback reportedly included it being linked to premature malfunction of the controllers.
There were rumors that Nintendo had attempted to legally block the release of the controller in North America due to the vibration feature's similarity to Nintendo's Rumble Pack. But Nintendo firmly denied it had taken any form of legal action over Sony's controllers.
Moreover, according to the United States Patent Office, 2 employees of Atari Games have held a patent on vibrating game controller technology since March 1991.
Another theory for the vibration feedback being dropped was that Sony simply wanted to keep the price of the controller down in order to maximize user adoption.
It was released in the United States on 27 August 1997 and in Europe in September 1997 with little promotion.
A few months later, the first DualShock controller was released in Japan on 20 November 1997.
Namco had already released an analog controller for PlayStation called Netcon.
Sony's dual analog controller's analog mode was not compatible with the Netcon-compatible games like Wipeout and Ridge Racer.
However, Need for Speed 2, Gran Turismo, and Gran Turismo 2 feature compatibility with both Netcon and dual analog control schemes. Fans of a smaller form factor, Japanese players, complained of very long hand grips, made the controller too large to be held properly. And the lack of a rumble feature in the US and European models are the most commonly cited reasons that Sony decided to end production of this controller and redesign it.
This redesign eventually became the DualShock.
The dual analog controller was discontinued in all 3 markets in 1998 to be replaced by the DualShock. The dual analog controller has 3 modes of operation: digital, which disables the analog sticks, analog, as also found on DualShock/DualShock 2 controllers, and an analog flight stick mode emulating the PlayStation Analog Joystick that is not available on the DualShock or DualShock 2. If a PlayStation game is DualShock or dual analog compatible, the player may press the analog button located between the 2 analog sticks to activate the analog mode.
This is indicated by a red LED.
If the dual analog controller is switched to analog mode while using a game which is not analog compatible, the game will not register any button presses, or, in some cases, the game will consider the controller to be detached.
This is due to the fact the controller's type ID that is reported to the game is changed when the button is pressed.
The ability to emulate Sony's own PlayStation analog joystick by pressing the analog button a second time to reveal a green LED. This was commonly referred to as flight stick mode. Provided a less expensive alternative to the flight stick analog joystick and retail for an average of US $35, compared to the flight stick's retail price of US $70. Similarly to the Nintendo 64 controller, the dual analog controller was designed to be held in 4 different ways. Standard control, in which the left thumb uses the directional buttons and the right thumb uses the action buttons. Analog control, in which the left thumb uses the left analog stick and the right thumb uses the action buttons. Dual analog control, which imitates the dual analog joystick, with both thumbs positioned over the analog sticks, and the shoulder buttons used instead of the action buttons. And analog digital control, in which the left thumb uses the directional buttons, the right thumb uses the right analog stick, and the shoulder buttons are again used for actions. MechWarrior 2, Ace Combat 2, Descent Maximum, and Colony Wars were among the shortlist of 27 PlayStation Flight Stick compatible games. The Japanese version of the controller, SCPH-1150, includes the vibration feedback feature, making it the first controller under the PlayStation brand to support force feedback technology. However, this feature is absent on all controllers released overseas, including those from North America and Europe, SCPH-1180 and SCPH-1180 respectively.
It has a single vibration motor, similar to that of the Rumble Pack, for the Nintendo 64, and is located on the left-hand side of the controller.
Unlike the Rumble Pack, which is powered by battery, the vibration motor is powered directly by the PlayStation. The DualShock, which was the first internationally released controller in the PlayStation brand to support force feedback, adds a larger vibration motor in addition to the standard one, which has been moved to the right-hand side of the controller as the larger motor is placed in the location where the dual analog's vibration motor would go, for a total of 2, allowing for vibration effects in stereo. This can, however, result in compatibility issues with a dual analog controller when used on DualShock compatible games as well as on all PlayStation 2 games.
On the other hand, games that are compatible with a dual analog's vibration capabilities will work with a DualShock.
The following games supported the vibration feature of the dual analog controller: Ace Combat 2, Japan, Ball Blazer Champions, US, Japan, Bushido Blade, Japan, Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back, Ghost in the Shell, Japan, Europe, MDK, US Gem Pack Demo Only, Porsche Challenge, Europe, US Demo Only, Rallycross, and Total 2. The dual analog controller features several aspects that remain exclusive to it, and were scrapped or redesigned for the release of the DualShock controller. Only the Japanese version features a vibration feedback function.
The European and American versions of the controller do, however, include circuitry and mounts for a rumble motor, a possible leftover from the Japanese version of the controller, and therefore installing the motor is a simple process.
Due to a lack of vibration-compatible games at the time, the European and American versions were not shipped with rumble feedback and, as a result, weigh significantly less than their overseas counterpart, and fall somewhere between the weights of the standard controller and the DualShock.
The rumble functionality, even when installed on overseas controllers, will not work on all PlayStation 2 software due to compatibility issues. The hand grips are 1.5 centimeters, 0.59 inches longer than the original controller and the later DualShock controller.
The body of the controller is also wider, spacing the pads slightly further apart.
This wider controller body has been retained on the DualShock and all later PlayStation controllers.
The L2 and R2 buttons have ridges at the top edge to easily distinguish them from the L1 and R1 buttons and are spaced further apart than the original controller or DualShock.
Whoa!
They are also wider than the standard controller, but shorter than the DualShock. The analog sticks are concave and lack the rubberized coating that has been used on the DualShock and later controllers.
In addition to the standard digital mode and the regular red-LED analog mode, there is a third mode that emulates the layout of Sony's own PlayStation analog joystick and is indicated by a green LED.
This feature is missing on the DualShock. The analog button used for switching modes is raised instead of recessed like the DualShock's button and can be more easily hit accidentally.
And the analog mode cannot be changed or locked by software as it can with a DualShock controller and later. Released in 1998, the DualShock controller for the PlayStation succeeded its predecessor, the Dual Analog, and became the longest-running series of controllers for the PlayStation brand.
In addition to the inputs of the original digital controller, triangle, circle, cross, square, L1, L2, R1, R2. Start, selected a D-pad, the DualShock featured two analog sticks in a similar fashion to the previous dual analog controller, which can also be depressed to activate the L3 and R3 buttons.
The DualShock series consists of 4 controllers: the DualShock, which was the 4th controller released for the PlayStation, the DualShock 2, the only standard controller released for the PlayStation 2, and the DualShock 3, the second and current controller released for the PlayStation 3, and the DualShock 4, which went through a massive redesign and is the default input of the PlayStation 4, and upon release was compatible with a PS3 originally only via USB and eventually, with a firmware update, Bluetooth connectivity was enabled.
Whoa!
The 6-axis was the first official controller for the PlayStation 3 and is based on the same design as the DualShock series, but lacking the vibration motors of the DualShock series of controllers.
Like the Dual Analog, the DualShock and DualShock 2 feature an analog button between the analog sticks that toggles the analog sticks on and off for use with games which support only the digital input of the original controller.
On the PlayStation 3 6-axis and DualShock 3 controllers, the analog sticks are always enabled.
Beginning with a 6-axis, a PlayStation button, which featured the incorporated PS logo and is similar in function to the Xbox 360 guide button, was included on controllers.
The PlayStation button replaces the analog button of the DualShock and DualShock 2 controllers.
Pressing the PS button on the PS3 brings up the XMP, while holding it down brings up system options, known as Quick Menu, on the PS4. Such as quit the game, change controller settings, turn off the system, and turn off the controller. The DualShock, originally DualShock, trademarked as DualShock, in caps or DualShock, with a PlayStation 5 version as DualSense, is a line of Game Pass, developed by Sony Interactive Entertainment for the PlayStation family of video game consoles.
It is named for vibration feedback and analog controls.
Introduced in November 1997, it was initially marketed as a secondary peripheral for the first PlayStation console.
The console's bundle was updated to include DualShock and phased out the original PlayStation controller and the dual analog controller.
The DualShock is the best-selling gamepad of all time by units sold, excluding bundle controllers. Introduced in late 1997, the DualShock Analog Controller SCPH-1200 can provide vibration feedback based on game activity as well as input through 2 analog sticks.
Its name derives from its dual vibration motors.
These motors are housed within the handles, with the left one being larger and more powerful than the one on the right, so to allow for varying levels of vibration.
In comparison, the Nintendo 64's Rumble Pack has only one motor and is powered by battery, while the DualShock has two motors, and all corded varieties of the DualShock are powered directly by the PlayStation.
Whoa!
The rumble feature of the DualShock is similar to that of the Japanese version of the dual analog controller released a few months earlier, which was completely absent on all dual analog controllers released outside of Japan. The dual analog, DualShock, and all of its subsequent controllers include a standard set of controls that were first introduced in the original PlayStation controller, in addition to the two analog sticks. A directional pad, start and select buttons, 4 face buttons, and 4 shoulder buttons.
The face buttons, in particular, use simple geometric shapes instead of letters or numbers, which includes a green triangle, a red circle, a blue cross, and a pink square, triangle, circle, cross, square. These shapes established a trademark that was heavily incorporated into the PlayStation brand.
The designer of the original PlayStation controller, TaBNWNE, explained the meaning behind the symbols. The circle and cross were made to represent yes and no, respectively, as common in Japanese culture, and thus were typically used for confirm and cancel in most PlayStation games, in Japan respectively, placed in the same way as the A and B buttons on the Super NES controller with similar functions. While the triangle symbolizes a point of view and the square is equated to a sheet of paper there, to be used to access menus.
In Western releases, the circle and cross functions are often switched: circle to cancel, cross to confirm or reassign to a different button, cross to confirm, triangle to cancel.
The DualShock, like its predecessor the dual analog controller, has two analog sticks with 8-bit precision.
To compensate for control issues with certain games, while the controller is in analog mode, a dedicated button known as the analog button is included, which allows the controller to function either in analog or digital mode, the latter of which turns off the analog sticks and allows the controller to act as an original PlayStation controller using only the digital buttons.
Analog functionality is denoted by a red indicator light, which is turned off if the controller is in digital mode.
Unlike the dual analog controller, the DualShock's analog sticks feature textured rubber grips with convex stone caps rather than the smooth plastic tips with recessed, concave grooves found on the dual analog controller.
Other visible differences between the dual analog and the DualShock include the longer grips and handles of the former and slightly larger L2/R2 buttons on the latter.
The dual analog controller also has an additional mode accessible by pressing the analog button a third time that provides compatibility with a PlayStation analog joystick. Indicated by a green light on the analog indicator light rather than red, this feature was not carried over to the DualShock.
The analog button is also slightly recessed on the DualShock to prevent accidental switching between analog and digital modes in certain games. The DualShock controller is widely supported shortly after its launch in most new games, including Wacky Wacky Puyo Puyo Dungeon, Crash Bandicoot, Warped, Spur of the Dragon. And Tekken 3 includes support for the vibration feature on dual analog sticks, and Capcom re-released Resident Evil, Director's Cut, and Resident Evil 2, with support for the controller added to these newer versions.
Some games designed for the dual analog's vibration capability, such as Porsche Challenge and Crash Bandicoot 2, also work.
Many games take advantage of the presence of two motors to provide vibration effects in stereo, including Gran Turismo and the PlayStation port of Quake 2.
Beginning in 1998, the DualShock It came bundled with a console as the standard controller for all regions, replacing the original digital-only controller that was used since its Japan and Western launches in 1994 and 1995 respectively.
Released in 1999, the PlayStation Hit 8 Escape is the first game to explicitly require dual analog/DualShock type controllers, with its gameplay requiring the use of both analog sticks. In 2000, the PS1, a redesigned version of the original PlayStation, was released with a slightly redesigned DualShock controller, SCPH-110.
This controller is similar to the first one, except with a PS1 word mark replacing PlayStation underneath the logo. A purple hue on the buttons and sticks to match the color scheme of the PS1, a semicircle shaped connector, and multiple color options for the body.
The standard color of the controller was white, matching the color of the redesigned console. The PlayStation 2 is backward compatible with a DualShock as it uses the same connector and protocol as the original PlayStation console, due to the console's backward compatibility with original PlayStation peripherals.
However, certain PS2 games that utilize the DualShock 2's analog buttons such as the bouncer are not compatible with the DualShock.
The DualShock 2 analog controller SCPH-10010 or SCPH-97026, included with PlayStation 2's launch, is almost identical externally as the previous DualShock analog controller with a few minor cosmetic changes.
It has different screw positioning and one fewer screw.
A blue DualShock 2 logo was added to the top of the controller. The connector is shaped more square than the original DualShock, and both the cable and connector are black rather than gray.
The standard controller is black, with other color variants being released later on, rather than gray as with the original DualShock.
The analog sticks are stiffer than on the original DualShock. Internally, the DualShock 2 is lighter on all of the buttons, except for the analog mode, start, select, L3 and R3 buttons are readable as analog values, pressure sensitive.
The DualShock 2 can sense 256 levels of pressure.
The DualShock 2 has been made available in various colors: black, satin silver, ceramic white, slate gray, clear, ocean blue, emerald green, crimson red, lemon yellow, and candy pink. A number of coin-operated arcade cabinets have included controller ports for connecting DualShock or DualShock 2 controllers, including Namco's Tekken 5 and Konami's Winning 11 Arcade Championship 2012. The original PlayStation is forward compatible with a DualShock 2.
The PlayStation 3 is backward compatible with a DualShock and DualShock 2 by the use of third-party peripherals which connect the controller to the console via a USB port.
However, the DualShock and DualShock 2 will not work properly with games that require 6-axis functionality, such as Heavy Rain. The DualShock 3 wireless controller SCPH-98050/CECHZC2 is a gamepad for the PlayStation 3 and was announced at the 2007 Tokyo Game Show.
It succeeds the 6-axis wireless controller originally released with earlier versions of the console.
The DualShock 3 is nearly identical to the previous 6-axis version but adds the haptic feedback capabilities found in the DualShock and DualShock 2.
Sony settled a patent infringement lawsuit with Immersion in March 2007 following a lengthy legal battle.
The settlement cleared the way for incorporating the vibration feature that the 6-axis lacks.
Both the vibration function and motion sensing capabilities of the DualShock 3 can be used simultaneously without one interfering with the other.
Like the 6-axis, it has a USB mini-D port for charging and can also be used on a PSP Go and the PlayStation TV via Bluetooth, though the controller and the PSP Go or the PlayStation TV must be registered using a PS3 console. The DualShock 3 can be identified by its DualShock 3 and 6-axis markings.
It also weighs 192 grams, 6.8 ounces, 40% more than its predecessor, the 6-axis, which weighed only 137.1 grams, 4.84 ounces.
The rear markings indicate the original DualShock 3 draws up to 300 mA of current at 3.7 volts for a power consumption of 1.11 watts. An order of magnitude increase from the 30 mA of current at 3.7 volts, 0.111 watts, listed on the 6-axis.
However, this current is not drawn constantly and is the maximum current when the rumble is active.
Its main power source is an internal 3.7 volts Li-ion battery tentatively capable of storing 570 mA, which provides up to 30 hours of continuous gaming on a full charge.
Third-party replacement batteries are also available.
Whoa!
Like the 6-axis, the DualShock 3 comes with instructions on how to remove and replace the battery.
The DualShock 3 can also draw power over a USB cable via the USB mini-D connector on the top of the controller.
This allows the controller to be used when the battery is low and is also used for charging the battery.
When connected via USB, the controller communicates with the console through the USB cable rather than Bluetooth.
Along with the release of the slim model PS3, Sony released a new version of the DualShock 3 A1, which uses 5.0 volts at 500 mA while connected, but still contains a 3.7 volts battery.
This revision of the DualShock 3 does away with the additional plastic brackets between the L1/R1 buttons and the L2/R2 triggers, increasing controller rigidity, has indicator lights soldered directly to the board, and comes in slightly revised color schemes.
While the DualShock 3 is compatible with any standard USB mini-D cable and many USB chargers, official charging cables are available from Sony.
These include an official cable, the USB 2.0 cable pack, and a wall charger, the AC adapter charging kit.
Any third-party USB charger used must act as a USB host device, rather than simply providing power over the appropriate pins, since both the 6-axis and DualShock 3 require a host signal to wake up and begin charging. A Sony representative confirmed on April 2, 2008, that the original 6-axis controller would officially be discontinued with the release of a haptic feedback-enabled DualShock 3 in mid-April 2008.
The 6-axis was no longer produced after 2008, being dropped from stock by most retailers.
The DualShock 3 has been produced in various colors: charcoal black, satin silver, ceramic white, classic white, metallic blue, deep red, pink, jungle green, olive, candy blue, light blue, urban camouflage, 3-color digital camouflage, crimson red, transparent red, and cosmic blue, transparent blue.
Not all colors have been made available in all markets or at all times.
Additional colors have been released alongside limited edition consoles, including gunmetal gray and cloud black, dark gray. A limited edition baseball-themed DualShock 3 controller was released on March 8, 2011, to coincide with the release of MLB 11, the show.
Another color, metallic gold, became available in June 2012 as a limited edition in Europe, and in North America it is sold exclusively in GameStop from October 2012.
A limited edition God of War Ascension controller is available in the UK as part of a console bundle to coincide with the launch of the game, and in the Americas as a game and controller bundle.
On November 1, 2013, Sony announced a new transparent crystal model of the DualShock 3 controller in Japan.
The DualShock 4 CUHZCT1 or CUHZCT2 is the PlayStation 4's controller.
It has several new features from DualShock 3.
One new feature is a built-in 2-point capacitive touchpad on the front of the controller, which can be clicked.
This allows the touchpad to represent multiple buttons, as demonstrated in the PS4 version of Elite Dangerous, in which the four corners of the touchpad can be mapped to a separate clickable actions.
The controller supports motion detection via a 3-axis gyroscope and 3-axis accelerometer and vibration.
It includes a rechargeable 3.7 volts, 1000 mAh lithium-ion battery, which can be charged while the system is in rest mode.
It weighs 210 grams, 7.4 ounces, and has dimensions of 162 millimeters by 52 millimeters by 98 millimeters, 6.4 inches by 2.0 inches by 3.9 inches. The front of the controller features a light bar containing 3 LEDs that, when lit in conjunction, cause the light bar to glow a variety of colors.
Developed for PlayStation VR, it can be used to identify players by matching the colors of the characters they control in a game, or to provide enhanced feedback or immersion by changing patterns or colors in reaction to gameplay.
An early example of this is displayed in the game Grand Theft Auto 5. The light bar will flash red and blue when the player is wanted by the police, simulating the flashing lights of a police car.
The light bar is also used in conjunction with a PlayStation camera to judge the positions and movements of multiple players.
The controller features several input and output connectors, a stereo headset jack, 3.5mm CTI-ATRRS connector, a micro USB port, and an extension port.
It can be charged using the console, using a dedicated charging station, or via micro USB using a standalone charger.
It also includes a mono speaker, like the Wii remote, and is the second major controller in video game history to have such feature. The DualShock 4 features the following buttons: PS button, share button, options button, directional buttons, action buttons, triangle, circle, cross, square. Shoulder buttons, L1/R1, triggers, L2/R2, analog stick click buttons, L3/R3, and the touchpad click button.
Whoa!
These mark several changes from the DualShock 3 and other previous PlayStation controllers.
The start and select buttons have been merged into a single options button.
A dedicated share button allows players to upload screenshots and videos from their gameplay experiences.
The joysticks and triggers have been redesigned based on developer input, with a rich surface of the joysticks now featuring an outer ring surrounding the convex dome caps.
This gave the analog sticks a more concave-like appearance, with a similar yet different appearance being previously seen in the dual analog controller from 1997 that had completely concave plastic analog sticks.
The DualShock 4's buttons differ slightly in functionality from that of the DualShock 3.
Only the L2 and R2 triggers have any kind of analog input, as all of its buttons, aside from the analog sticks, were changed back into digital inputs. For the first time since the original DualShock, a change from the functionality of the DualShock 2 and 3.
Whoa!
This is likely due to the fact that most games did not utilize these buttons as well as due to it not being used on competitors' controllers. The PlayStation 3 is forward compatible with a DualShock 4 originally via a micro USB cable only. However, firmware update 4.60 for the PS3 adds wireless connectivity for the DualShock 4, albeit without the vibration and motion sensing capabilities.
As the start and select buttons are no longer present, the options and share buttons respectively replace them.
The PS button does not work, thus requiring the console to be reset in order to go back to the menu.
The PlayStation 5 is backward compatible with a DualShock 4 exclusively for backward compatible PlayStation 4 games.
Sony's earlier DualShock 4 controllers, CU-HZCT1 controllers, have wear issues with a rubber surface on both analog sticks, which exhibit excessive wear or tearing after short-term use.
In January 2014, Sony issued a statement acknowledging an issue on 10% of controllers.
On September 15, 2016, a second version of DualShock 4 controllers was released, the DualShock version 2, CU-HZCT2, which boasts slight improvements over the original DualShock 4, including USB communication, improved triggers and joysticks, a longer battery life and the ability to see the light bar from the top of the touchpad. In the first generation controller, the light bar is a permanently illuminated, bright-colored light.
The needless light pollution and battery drain prompted inquiries as to whether the light bar could be switched off by users.
Sony executive Shuhei Yoshida initially responded in the negative in July 2013, though game developers have the option to disable the light in-game.
In early 2014, the company announced that a future update would allow the light bar to be dimmed, which was delivered in 1.70 in April 2014.
The original DualShock 4 CU-HZCT1 is available in jet black, glacier white, urban camouflage, wave blue, black back, magma red, black back, gold, silver, and steel black. The newer DualShock 4 CU-HZCT2 has been produced in jet black, glacier white, green camouflage, blue camouflage, red camouflage, rose gold, electric purple, wave blue, blue back, magma red, red back, gold, silver, sunset orange, crystal, red crystal, blue crystal, steel black, midnight blue, metallic copper, alpine green, and berry blue. Several versions of the DualShock 4 controller were released. Exclusive console bundles with DualShock 4 include the 20th Anniversary Edition, Gunmetal, Pac-Man, Arkham Knight, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, Call of Duty, Black Ops 3, Uncharted 4, Assault's End, Star Wars Battlefront, Monster Hunter World, God of War, Gran Turismo Sport, Call of Duty, World War II, The Days of Play, Marvel Spider-Man, Death Stranding, The Last of Us Part 2, and the 500 million limited edition PS4 Pro. The DualSense CFIZCT1W is the PlayStation 5's controller.
Unveiled on April 7, 2020, it is based on the DualShock 4 controller. Changes to its design and capabilities were influenced by discussions with game designers and players.
It weighs 280 grams, 9.9 ounces, and has dimensions of 160 millimeters by 66 millimeters by 106 millimeters, 6.3 inches by 2.6 inches by 4.2 inches. The DualSense is primarily white with black facing.
Its monochrome action buttons are the first colored action buttons for a standard PlayStation controller.
Sony's handheld consoles, the PlayStation Vita and PlayStation Portable, have monochrome buttons.
Its more ergonomic design is bigger, rounder, and heftier than the DualShock 4.
The light bar has been moved from the top of the controller to the horizontal edges of the touchpad. Player number is indicated by 5 LEDs below the touchpad.
The Share button has been replaced with Create to emphasize creating content to share.
The black plastic piece surrounding the analog sticks can be removed without tools. The DualSense supports vibro-tactile haptic through voice coil actuators in the palm grips, and the analog triggers, dubbed adaptive triggers, now have a force feedback mechanism provided by 2 DC rotary motors.
The actuators enable games to provide varied feedback, such as feeling the wind and sand in a sandstorm.
The adaptive triggers provide varying levels of resistance to the user depending on game actions.
An example provided by Sony is being able to feel the tension of a bowstring as the user pulls the trigger.
Connectivity includes a 3.5mm audio jack, USB-C, which replaces the micro USB port on the DualShock 4, and copper pins for use with charging docks.
The controller speaker provides a clearer sound.
The controller also has a dual microphone array, allowing players to communicate without an external headset and enabling Sony to introduce voice typing to the PS5.
The controller has a rechargeable 3.65 volts, 1560 mAh lithium-ion battery, which can be charged while in rest mode.
Unveiled in August 2022, the DualSense Edge CFIZ-CQ1 is a new controller for the PlayStation 5 with more capabilities.
It was released on January 26, 2023 on PlayStation Direct, then sold through other retailers beginning on February 23, 2023.
The DualSense Edge has a more modular design than the DualSense, featuring replaceable analog stick modules, interchangeable analog stick caps, standard DualSense caps, and high and low convex dome caps that also resembled earlier DualShock analog sticks prior to the DualShock 4, and rear paddle buttons, adjustable trigger lengths, multiple control profiles as well as customizable mapping inputs.
It also includes a lockable, braided USB-C cable.
The DualSense has become a subject of a class action lawsuit due to a perceived drift in one of the analog sticks, being litigated by the same firm that is challenging Nintendo for a similar drift issue in its Joy-Con controllers for the Nintendo Switch. As a hidden Easter egg, the DualSense has a unique microtexture.
There are 40,000 tiny symbols stacked on top of each other, consisting of the 4 PlayStation button symbols: triangle, circle, cross, square.
Multiple designs were hand-drawn, digitized, and made as prototypes before the design team settled on the current design.
The larger symbols are 0.5 millimeter wide.
Sean Hollister, writing for The Verge, wrote an article examining the microtexture and its creation.
The company decided to apply a microtexture to the DualSense controller's entire lower shell, making it Sony's most grippable gamepad, yet because of the thousands upon thousands of tiny squares, triangles, circles, and crosses literally at your fingertips. These tiny symbols are stacked on top of each other, jutting out in 3 dimensions. They're not a single, evenly spaced layer at all. Morizawa, the senior art director of Sony's Design Center Product Design Group, explains that a variety of designs were handcrafted, digitized, mocked up, applied to actual prototype gamepads, and tested over and over again until the teams found the balance they wanted. Good looking, textured enough to be comfortable and non-slip, but not so sandpaper rough that it'd hurt your hands over a lengthy gaming session.
Hollister also mentioned that the one downside to the microtexture is that it picks up dirt extremely easily and doesn't want to let go. The DualSense has been produced in various colors: white, cosmic red, midnight black, galactic purple, nova pink, starlight blue, gray camouflage, cobalt blue, volcanic red, sterling silver, chroma indigo, chroma pearl, and chroma teal.
Sony has also released limited/special editions of the DualSense, which includes controllers themed after God of War Ragnarok, Hogwarts Legacy, LeBron James, Final Fantasy XVI, Japan only, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Conquered, US only, 2 Astrobot versions, Fortnite, the PlayStation 30th anniversary, Helldivers 2, Monster Hunter Wilds, Japan only, The Last of Us, Death Stranding 2, On the Beach, Ghost of Yachty, and the 20th anniversary of the God of War franchise.
While the DualShock 3, DualShock 4, and DualSense controllers are fully compatible with Mac computers running Mac OS and Apple devices running iOS such as the iPhone and iPad, in that they will work natively without any additional software, there are various other software available that allows the use of these controllers on PCs and other mobile devices, especially for users of Microsoft Windows and Android respectively. PS4 Windows is an open-source software application that allows various PlayStation controllers to be used on PCs running versions of Microsoft Windows up to 11 by emulating a virtual Xbox or DualShock 4 controller.
Specifically, this is relevant for DualShock 3, DualShock 4, DualSense and DualSense Edge controllers, enabling them to function effectively on PC platforms.
The software supports key remapping and rebinding, allowing for customization of controller settings for games that do not natively support PlayStation controllers.
PS4 Windows features both USB and Bluetooth connectivity and offers customizable profiles for gamepad settings.
While primarily made for PlayStation controllers such as the DualShock, some Nintendo controllers including the Switch's Joy-Con and Switch Pro controllers are also supported by the software, allowing them to be played on PCs outside of their respective consoles.
Third-party controllers for the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 are also compatible with varying levels of compatibility.
The DualShock controller was given a Technology and Engineering Emmy Award for Peripheral Development and Technological Impact of Video Game Controllers by the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences on January 8, 2007. The 6-axis, trademarked 6-axis in caps, is a wireless gamepad produced by Sony for their PlayStation 3 video game console.
It was introduced alongside the PlayStation 3 in 2006 and remained the console's official controller until 2008.
The term 6-axis was used to refer to the motion sensing technology in PlayStation 3 controllers.
It is a contraction of 6-axis, which refers to the ability to sense motion in all axes of the 6 degrees of freedom.
The name is a misnomer because there are only 3 axes, X, Y, and Z, which allow 6 degrees of freedom, rotation about each axis and translation along each axis.
The 6-axis name is also a palindrome, meaning that it can be written the same way forwards and backwards.
At the time of the PlayStation 3's development, the DualShock 3, which like the DualShock and DualShock 2 controllers, would have incorporated haptic technology, also known as force feedback, was originally slated to be released alongside the console in in time for its intended launch. However, Sony was in the midst of appealing a decision from a 2004 lawsuit involving patent infringement claimed by Immersion.
The two companies were at odds over the haptic feedback technology used in earlier PlayStation controllers.
The legal battle led to a decision to remove the vibration capabilities from the PS3 controller's initial design, which became known as 6-axis. The 6-axis was succeeded by the vibration-capable DualShock 3 in late 2007 and early 2008.
The 6-axis and the DualShock 3 controller can also be used with PSP, Go and the PlayStation TV via Bluetooth after registering the controller on a PlayStation 3 console.
At E3 2005, Sony showcased a Boomerang designed for the PlayStation 3 controller, which is not used on any shipped controller.
This design was poorly received, and Sony later stated that the original controller was very clearly designed as a design concept, and was never intended to be the final controller, despite what everybody said about it.
At E3 2006, Sony announced the 6-axis, a wireless, motion-sensitive controller, similar in overall design to the earlier PlayStation DualShock controllers.
This controller was bundled with all new systems from launch, beginning with a 20GB CECHVXX and 60GB CECHAXX and CECHCXX models, until the introduction of the revised 80GB CECHKXX, CECHLXX and CECHMXX model, which replaced the 6-axis. With the new DualShock 3 as the standard pack-in controller for the system, the DualShock 3 added the vibration feature that was missing from the 6-axis while retaining the design, features and functionality of the former.
The 6-axis controller was later phased out and replaced by the DualShock 3 controller completely and is no longer being produced in any region.
Despite this, the 6-axis survived the longest in Europe, where the Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots PlayStation 3 bundle for that region, released in the summer of 2008, included a 6-axis. All other MGS4 PlayStation 3 bundles in other regions except Europe included the DualShock 3.
A major feature of the 6-axis controller, and from where its name is derived, is the ability to sense both rotational orientation and translational acceleration along all three-dimensional axes, providing 6 degrees of freedom.
This became a matter of controversy as the circumstances of the announcement, made less than 8 months after Nintendo revealed motion sensing capabilities in its new game console controller, Wii Remote, led to speculation that the addition of motion sensing was a late-stage decision by Sony to follow Nintendo's move.
Also, some comments from Incognito Entertainment, the developer behind Warhawk, said that it received development controllers with a motion sensing feature only 10 days or so before E3.
Developer Brian Upton from Santa Monica Studio later clarified that Incognito had been secretly working on the motion sensing technology for a while, but was also withheld a working controller until the last few weeks before E3.
The 6-axis featured finer analog sensitivity than the DualShock 2, increased to 10-bit precision from the 8-bit precision of the DualShock 2.
The controller also uses both analog and digital signals simultaneously at all times during gameplay, which necessitated the removal of the analog mode button found in previous Sony dual analog controllers, Dual Analog, DualShock and DualShock 2.
In its place was a jewel-like, PS button with a PlayStation logo, which can be used to access the home menu or XMP after system software version 2.40. Switch controller inputs and turn the console or the controller on or off.
It fulfills a similar function to the guide button featured on Microsoft's Xbox 360 controller or the home button on the Wii remote.
The frame beneath the L2 and R2 buttons has been omitted and the buttons themselves have been made trigger-like, with a range of travel determining the degree of analog input rather than the range of pressure.
The 6-axis is predominantly colored black, but other colors were available.
The controller's housing is in a slightly translucent shell compared to its predecessors, the DualShock 2, DualShock and Dual Analog, which allowed some light to pass through the controller.
This was changed back to an opaque shell similar to that of the DualShock 2 for the DualShock 3.
Sony announced that because of the included motion sensors, the vibration feature of previous PlayStation controllers was removed, stating that the vibration would interfere with motion sensing.
This therefore made the PS3 wireless controller feel light to players accustomed to heavier controllers such as the DualShock.
Haptics developer Immersion Corporation, which had successfully sued Sony for patent infringement, expressed skepticism of Sony's rationale, with company president Victor Viegas stating in an interview, "I don't believe it's a very difficult problem to solve, and Immersion has experts that would be happy to solve that problem for them under the condition that Sony withdraw its appeal of the patent infringement ruling."
Immersion later emphasized compatibility with motion sensing when introducing its next-generation vibration feedback technology, TouchSense.
The Wii Remote, another contemporary motion controller that was released the same year as the PlayStation 3, was able to incorporate vibration. These vibration designs didn't fall into Immersion and Sony's patent infringement lawsuit as their implementation of vibration technology uses a different design. Subsequent statements from Sony were dismissive of the arguments from Immersion, with SCEA Senior VP of Marketing Peter Dill stating, "It seems like the folks at Immersion are looking to sort of negotiate through the press and try to make their case to us. We've talked about how there's a potential for that rumble to interfere with a 6-axis controller."
However, in a press release made some 8 months later, Phil Harrison, Sony's president of worldwide studios at the time, said he didn't see a need for Sony's controllers to have rumble, noting that it was the last generation feature and that he thought motion sensitivity is the next generation feature.
He added that rumble and other forms of feedback would continue to be valuable for certain types of games, however that would most likely come from third-party controllers. In the end, Sony would later decide to include rumble functionality in their DualShock 3 controller after finally settling on the lawsuit in early 2007. In a change from previous PlayStation controllers, the 6-axis features wireless connectivity based on the Bluetooth standard.
However, the 6-axis lacks a Bluetooth discovery mode, which is normally used for connecting to Bluetooth devices wirelessly, so a wired USB connection is required to set up the 6-axis with the appropriate Bluetooth address before a wireless connection can be made.
When used with a PSP, Go or the PlayStation TV, the PS3 is required to set up the 6-axis.
This was retained for the DualShock 3.
Both the 6-axis and the DualShock 3 are fully compatible with Apple Mac computers running Mac OS, formerly known as Mac OS X and OS X, as they work out of the box with no external software required.
Additional work is needed to support 6-axis and DualShock 3 controllers on PCs running Microsoft Windows or Android devices. which includes using custom software and Bluetooth drivers, or in the case of Android, an app and root access.
DS4 Windows is one example of an application for Windows that allows the use of 6-axis or DualShock 3 controllers using an emulated Xbox or DualShock 4 controller. The 6-axis wireless controller features an internal 3.7-volt Li-ion battery, which provides up to 30 hours of continuous gaming on a full charge.
Third-party replacement batteries are also available.
The battery was originally not thought to be replaceable when a Sony spokesperson stated that the 6-axis should operate for many years before there's any degradation in terms of battery performance. When and if this happens, then of course Sony will be providing a service to exchange these items.
Later, it was revealed that the 6-axis came with instructions on how to remove the battery and that the battery was fully removable.
The DualShock 3 also uses this battery. The 6-axis can also draw power over a USB cable via a USB mini-B connector on the top of the controller.
This allows the controller to be used when the battery is low and is also used for charging the battery.
When connected via USB, the controller will communicate with the console over the USB connection rather than wirelessly.
This also applies to the DualShock 3.
On the top of the controller is a row of 4 numbered LEDs, which are used to identify and distinguish multiple wireless controllers.
These are similar to the indicators found on the Wii U remote and the ring of light on the Xbox 360 controller.
Since the PlayStation 3 supports up to 7 controllers, controllers 5, 6, and 7 are represented as the sum of 2 other indicators despite having 4 LEDs. For example, controller 5 is represented by illuminating indicators 4 and 1 at the same time, since 4 plus 1 equals 5. Sony also patented the technology to be able to track the motion of these LEDs with a PlayStation Eye camera for use alongside the PlayStation Move controller.
Though this was never utilized on the 6-axis or the DualShock 3, its successor, the DualShock 4, features a light bar used for motion tracking, as well as player identification.
The DualSense CFIZCT1W is the PlayStation 5's controller.
Unveiled on April 7, 2020, it is based on the DualShock 4 controller. Changes to its design and capabilities were influenced by discussions with game designers and players.
It weighs 280 grams, 9.9 ounces, and has dimensions of 160 millimeters by 66 millimeters by 106 millimeters, 6.3 inches by 2.6 inches by 4.2 inches. The DualSense is primarily white with black facing.
Its monochrome action buttons are the first non-colored action buttons for a standard PlayStation controller.
Sony's handheld consoles, the PlayStation Vita and PlayStation Portable, have monochrome buttons.
Its more ergonomic design is bigger, rounder, and heftier than the DualShock 4.
The light bar has been moved from the top of the controller to the horizontal edges of the touchpad. Player number is indicated by 5 LEDs below the touchpad.
The Share button has been replaced with Create to emphasize creating content to share.
The black plastic piece surrounding the analog sticks can be removed without tools. The DualSense supports vibro-tactile haptic through voice coil actuators in the palm grips, and the analog triggers, dubbed adaptive triggers, now have a force feedback mechanism provided by 2 DC rotary motors.
The actuators enable games to provide varied feedback, such as feeling the wind and sand in a sandstorm.
The adaptive triggers provide varying levels of resistance to the user depending on game actions.
An example provided by Sony is being able to feel the tension of a bowstring as the user pulls the trigger.
Connectivity includes a 3.5mm audio jack, USB-C, which replaces the micro USB port on the DualShock 4, and copper pins for use with charging docks.
The controller speaker provides a clearer sound.
The controller also has a dual microphone array, allowing players to communicate without an external headset and enabling Sony to introduce voice typing to the PS5.
The controller has a rechargeable 3.65 volts, 1560 mAh lithium-ion battery, which can be charged while in rest mode.
Unveiled in August 2022, the DualSense Edge CFIZ-CP1 is a new controller for the PlayStation 5, with more capabilities.
It was released on January 26, 2023 on PlayStation Direct, then sold through other retailers beginning on February 23, 2023.
The DualSense Edge has a more modular design than the DualSense, featuring replaceable analog stick modules, interchangeable analog stick caps, standard DualSense caps, and high and low convex dome caps that also resembled earlier DualShock analog sticks prior to the DualShock 4, and rear paddle buttons, adjustable trigger lengths, multiple control profiles as well as customizable mapping inputs.
It also includes a lockable, braided USB-C cable.
The DualSense has become a subject of a class action lawsuit due to a perceived drift in one of the analog sticks, being litigated by the same firm that is challenging Nintendo for a similar drift issue in its Joy-Con controllers for the Nintendo Switch. As a hidden Easter egg, the DualSense has a unique microtexture.
There are 40,000 tiny symbols stacked on top of each other, consisting of the 4 PlayStation button symbols: triangle, circle, cross, square.
Multiple designs were hand-drawn, digitized, and made as prototypes before the design team settled on the current design.
The larger symbols are 0.5 millimeter wide.
Sean Hollister, writing for The Verge, wrote an article examining the microtexture and its creation.
The company decided to apply a microtexture to the DualSense controller's entire lower shell, making it Sony's most grippable gamepad, yet because of the thousands upon thousands of tiny squares, triangles, circles, and crosses literally at your fingertips. These tiny symbols are stacked on top of each other, jutting out in 3 dimensions. They're not a single, evenly spaced layer at all. Morizawa, the senior art director of Sony's Design Center Product Design Group, explains that a variety of designs were handcrafted, digitized, mocked up, applied to actual prototype gamepads, and tested over and over again until the teams found the balance they wanted. Good looking, textured enough to be comfortable and non-slip, but not so sandpaper rough that it'd hurt your hands over a lengthy gaming session.
Hollister also mentioned that the one downside to the microtexture is that it picks up dirt extremely easily and doesn't want to let go. The DualSense has been produced in various colors: white, cosmic red, midnight black, galactic purple, nova pink, starlight blue, gray camouflage, cobalt blue, volcanic red, sterling silver, chroma indigo, chroma pearl, and chroma teal.
Sony has also released limited/special editions of the DualSense, which includes controllers themed after God of War Ragnarok, Hogwarts Legacy, LeBron James, Final Fantasy XVI, Japan only, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Conquered, US only, 2 Astrobot versions, Fortnite, the PlayStation 30th anniversary. Helldivers 2, Monster Hunter Wilds, Japan Only, The Last of Us, Death Stranding 2, On the Beach, Ghost of Yabi, and the 20th anniversary of the God of War franchise.
PlayStation Move is a motion sensing game controller platform for the PlayStation 3 video game console by Sony Computer Entertainment, SCE.
Based on the handheld motion controller wand, PlayStation Move uses the PlayStation Eye webcam to track the wand's position and the inertial sensors in the wand to detect its motion.
First revealed on June 2, 2009, PlayStation Move was launched in Q3/Q4 2010.
Hardware available at launch included the main PlayStation Move motion controller and an optional PlayStation Move subcontroller.
Although PlayStation Move is implemented on the existing PlayStation 3 console, Sony states that it is treating Move's debut as its own major platform launch, planning an aggressive marketing campaign to support it.
In addition to selling the controllers individually, Sony also plans to provide several different bundle options for PlayStation Move hardware, including a starter kit with a PSI, a Move motion controller, and a demo/sampler disc, priced under US $100, a full console pack with a PS3 console, DualShock 3 gamepad, PSI, and Move motion controller, and bundles of a Move motion controller with select games.
PlayStation Move, Kurisutessen Move is a motion game controller developed by Sony Interactive Entertainment.
Initially released in 2010 for use with a PlayStation 3 home video game console, its compatibility was later expanded to its successor, the PlayStation 4, its PlayStation VR platform, and the PlayStation 5.
A revised model of the controller with a micro USB terminal is not backwards compatible with PS3. Conceptually similar to Nintendo's Wii Remote, its function is based around controller input and game stemming from the actual physical movement of the player.
The Move uses inertial sensors in the wand to detect motion, while the wand's position is tracked using a PlayStation Eye or PlayStation camera.
The device was generally well received by critics, but has not quite met Sony's goals for integration into the market. As with the standard PlayStation 3 wireless controllers, 6-axis, DualShock 3. Both the main PlayStation Move motion controller and the PlayStation Move navigation controller use Bluetooth 2.0 and an internal lithium-ion battery, charged via a USB mini-V port on the controller.
On the PlayStation 3, up to 4 Move controllers can be used at once, 4 Move motion controllers, or 2 Move motion controllers and 2 Move navigation controllers.
The primary component of PlayStation Move, the PlayStation Move motion controller, is a wand controller which allows the user to interact with a console through motion and position in front of a PlayStation camera.
It functions similarly to the Wii Remote.
The PlayStation Move motion controller features an orb at the head, which can glow in any of a full range of colors using RGB light-emitting diodes, LEDs.
Based on the colors in the user environment captured by the camera, the system dynamically selects an orb color that can be distinguished from the rest of the scene.
The colored light serves as an active marker, the position of which can be tracked along the image plane by the camera.
The uniform spherical shape and known size of the light also allows the system to simply determine the controller's distance from the camera through the light's image size, thus enabling the controller's position to be tracked in 3 dimensions with high precision and accuracy.
The simple sphere-based distance calculation allows the controller to operate with minimal processing latency as opposed to other camera-based control techniques on the PlayStation 3. A pair of inertial sensors inside the controller, a 3-axis linear accelerometer and a 3-axis angular rate sensor are used to track rotation as well as overall motion.
An internal magnetometer is also used for calibrating the controller's orientation against the Earth's magnetic field to help correct against cumulative error drift by the inertial sensors.
In addition, an internal temperature sensor is used to adjust the inertial sensor readings against temperature effects.
The inertial sensors can be used for dead reckoning in cases which the camera tracking is insufficient, such as when the controller is obscured behind the player's back.
The controller face features a large oblong primary button, move, surrounded by small action buttons, triangle, circle, cross, square, and with a regular sized PS button beneath, arranged in a similar configuration as on the Blu-ray disc remote control.
On the left and right side of the controller is a select and start button, respectively.
On the underside is an analog trigger, T.
On the tail end of the controller is the wrist strap, USB port, and extension port.
The motion controller features vibration-based haptic technology.
In addition to providing a tracking reference, the controller's orb light can be used to provide visual feedback, simulating aesthetic effects such as the muzzle flash of a gun or the paint on a brush.
Using different orb colors for each controller, up to 4 motion controllers can be tracked at once on the PlayStation 3.
Demonstrations for the controller have featured activities using a single motion controller as well as those in which the user wields 2 motion controllers, with one in each hand.
To minimize the cost of entry, Sony stated that all launch titles for PlayStation Move would be playable with 1 motion controller, with enhanced options available for multiple motion controllers. On the PlayStation 3, image processing for PlayStation Move is performed in the console cell microprocessor.
According to Sony, use of the motion tracking library entails some synergistic processing unit (SPU) overhead as well as an impact on memory, though the company states that the effects will be minimized.
According to Move motion controller co-designer Anton Mikhailov, the library uses 1 to 2 megabytes of system memory. The PlayStation Move navigation controller is a one-handed supplementary controller designed for use in conjunction with a PlayStation Move motion controller for certain types of gameplay, similar to the Nintendo Wii Nunchuck. Although it lacks motion sensing technology, as dual-wield, independent two-handed motion control is implemented with the use of another Move controller.
Replicating the major functionality of the left side of a standard PlayStation 3 gamepad, the PlayStation Move navigation controller features a left analog stick with L3 button function, a D-pad, L1 button and L2 analog trigger.
The navigation controller also features cross and circle action buttons, as well as a PS button.
Since all controls correspond to those of a standard PlayStation 3 gamepad, a 6-axis or DualShock 3 controller can be used in place of the navigation controller in PlayStation Move applications.
A number of additional accessories have also been released for use in conjunction with the PlayStation Move controllers. PlayStation Move charging station could charge up any combination of 2 Move controllers.
PlayStation Move shooting attachment adapts the Move controllers into a handgun form.
The motion controller is fitted into the gun barrel so that the motion controller's D trigger is interlocked with a trigger on the gun attachment, while leaving all the topmost buttons accessible through an opening in the top.
Its functions are similar to the Wii Zapper.
PlayStation Move Sharpshooter attachment adapts both move controllers into an assault rifle form, which features an adjustable stock.
The motion controller is fitted into the gun barrel, connecting via the proprietary expansion port, while the navigation controller is clipped into a holder below this gun barrel.
This accessory also adds several buttons to the controller.
Several games, including Killzone 3, Dead Space, Extraction, SOCOM 4, US Navy SEALs and Resistance 3, officially support this peripheral.
It includes 3 unique inputs: the reload button, the pump action, and the firing mode selector.
Its model number is CECHYAZRA1E. And the PlayStation Move Racing Wheel allows players to simulate driving in video games.
The accessory features vibration feedback, paddle-style gear shifters, and twist throttle control on the right handle.
It can be used in an open mode, resembling motorcycle handlebars, or closed, more akin to a car steering wheel.
The motion controller attaches on the middle through its expansion port.
Its model number is CECHYAZWA1.
It supports games like Little Big Planet Karting, Gran Turismo 5, Need for Speed, Hot Pursuit, Burnout Paradise, Motorstorm, Apocalypse, Need for Speed, Most Wanted, and Dirt 3.
Games that are not designed to be used with a PlayStation Move controller also work, such as F1 2013, F1 2014, Motorstorm, Pacific Rift and Outrun Online Arcade. Because it is recognized as a standard DualShock 3 controller and maps the tilting of the wheel to the left analog movement, even without using the camera as a tracker.
In addition to selling the controllers individually, Sony also provides several different bundle options for PlayStation Move hardware, such as software/camera bundles with a PlayStation Eye, a Move motion controller and motion control-enabled software, console bundles, which include a PS3 console, DualShock 3 controller, PlayStation Eye, and Move motion controller, and bundles with a Move motion controller with select games. Though the games with the bundles vary in each region, most bundles come with a PlayStation Move demo disc which contains demos for 11 different games.
The bundles in Europe and Oceania, however, come with a PlayStation Move starter disc with a set of tutorial and 9 demos, same as the demo disc, except without Kung Fu Rider and Time Crisis.
The demos included are for the games Beat Sketcher, Echo Chrome 2, iPet, Kung Fu Rider, Sports Champions, Start the Party, The Shoot, Tiger Woods, PGA Tour 11, Time Crisis, Racing Storm, Tumble, and TV Superstars. In North America, bundles are available with a game Sports Champions or the PlayStation Move edition of iPet.
In Japan, bundles with Beat Sketch, Biohazard 5 Alternative Edition, or Big 3 Gun Shooting are available.
All bundles, as well as the standalone controller, will also include the demo disc for a limited time.
In Europe, a bundle will be released with a demo disc.
In Asian countries outside Japan such as Singapore, the bundles are available with a game Sports Champions, Start the Party, and Kung Fu Rider. PlayStation Move stems from early work on the iToy, a webcam-based controller for the PlayStation 2 conceived in 1999 and released in 2003.
Early in the iToy's inception, developers experimented with color-based 3D wand tracking, including prototypes using spheres.
By the time it was released, the iToy's focus was on hands-free applications.
With the emergence of affordable inertial sensors and the success of the Wii Remote Motion Controller Wand, in 2008 Sony began work on productizing its own motion controller wand, revisiting the sphere tracking concept for use with a PlayStation Eye, integrating inertial sensors and refining the device from an engineering and a design perspective.
The move's internal development code name was VYCON, so called because three groups, the hardware team in SCEI in Japan, the software engineering team at SCEA, and Sony's worldwide studios worked together to develop the hardware, with the 3 points of a Y indicating the three teams coming together.
This was the start of a new form of development at Sony, where hardware had previously been developed separately from software teams and later delivered along with technical documentation for software teams to get to grips with themselves. This move was continued with the development of the PlayStation Vita and PlayStation 4.
The motion controller was revealed at Sony's E3 2009 press conference on 2 June 2009 with a live demonstration using an engineering prototype.
Tentatively referred to as the PlayStation Motion Controller, the device was originally stated to be available in Q1/Q2 2010.
As of August 2009, the controller features and design had not been finalized. Soon after revealing the motion controller to developers, Sony indicated that it was exploring the possibility of using the motion controller in combination with a standard PlayStation 3 gamepad, such as having the player use the motion controller as a sword and use DualShock 3 as a shield.
One combination control scheme was demonstrated in September 2009 at the Tokyo Game Show for Biohazard 5 Alternative Edition, making particular use of the DualShock 3's analog stick.
Although users found the setup to work well, some found holding a DualShock with one hand to be somewhat awkward.
At the time, Sony was already rumored to be in the design phase of a supplementary controller akin to that of the Nunchuck controller for the Wii Remote.
In January 2010, Sony announced a revised release target, stating instead that the motion controller would launch in Q3/Q4 of 2010.
On March 10, Sony revealed the official name and logo at the Game Developers Conference, showcasing the final motion controller design and unveiling the PlayStation Move navigation controller, then referred to as the PlayStation Move subcontroller, to be launched concurrently with a motion controller.
The logo is a colored squiggle-like shape, representing a light trail from the sphere of a PlayStation Move motion controller being waved. Prior to the Game Developers Conference 2010, the PlayStation Move motion controller was known by several names.
Initially given little guidance on what to call the device, when it was unveiled in June 2009, many in the video game press informally referred to the controller as the Magic Wand, or simply Wand, due to the controller's wand design and glowing orb.
Sony has used the term PlayStation Motion Controller from the motion controller's introduction, but many perceived it to be used merely as a description.
Sony gradually clarified motion controller as the tentative name, but by this time media attention had shifted to rumored final names.
In September 2009, statements in two unconnected interviews at the Tokyo Game Show led to speculation that the controller may be referred to by developers as the Sphere.
In December, a brief reference to the motion controller as GEM by Electronic Arts CEO John Ricciello during a media industry conference presentation prompted to an admission by Sony that Jim was an early code name for the controller.
In January 2010, video game blog VG247 reported that Sony had named its PS3 motion control platform ARC.
The name was observed to liken the controller's glowing orb to the charged sphere of a Tesla coil or a plasma globe electrode.
The report was supported by evidence emerging in the following weeks, including a registration of the PlayStationArt.com domain name to SCE, dated October 2009, shortly after the Tokyo Game Show, and numerous references to ARC by President Brian Farrell of video game publisher THQ during the company's February earnings conference call.
Responding to speculation that Farrell's statements effectively confirmed the name, SCEA Senior Director of Corporate Communications Patrick Siegel stated that they did not, and that Farrell was referring to ARC as a rumored code name.
On March 1, it was reported that Sony submitted Japanese trademark application filing for PlayStation ARC.
A week later, on March 8, Sony was reportedly considering a hasty renaming due to a trademark held by competitor Microsoft for its ARC brand PC accessories, which could present trademark conflicts.
On March 9, Sony submitted a European trademark filing for PlayStation Move, which was announced as the official name the next day at Sony's press conference at the Game Developers Conference.
Video gaming blog Joystick reports several anonymous Sony sources claiming that the PlayStation Move logo presented at the conference resembles a letter A, because it is the same design for when the name was PlayStation ARC, in which the A would stand for ARC.
As part of the promotional marketing for Sorcery, the PlayStation Move controller was inducted into the Magic Circle Museum by Vice President Scott Penrose. PlayStation Move was released in various worldwide territories beginning September 15, 2010, including Europe, Australia, and North America.
In Japan, it was released on October 21, 2010.
The original controller had a mini USB connection and was compatible with PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and PlayStation 5.
In 2017, Sony launched a hardware revision, model code CECHZCM2, with a micro USB connector and a bigger battery. 1900 mAh, up from 1350, intended to be used with PlayStation VR.
This second version is not compatible with PS3.
It also removed the extension connector in the bottom, thus being incompatible with accessories such as the PlayStation Move sharpshooter attachment and the PlayStation Move racing wheel.
There are smaller cosmetic differences. The PS4 revision changed the Sony logo color from gray to black, added options legend to the start button and share legend to the select button. Alongside SIE Worldwide Studios and its second-party partners, a total of 36 third-party game development companies had confirmed that they would support the PlayStation Move by the time the finalized controller was announced in March 2010.
On the box art of PlayStation Move games, underneath the PlayStation 3 logo banner, a blue bar with white letters indicates when a game supports the PlayStation Move.
When a game can only be played with a PlayStation Move, the box art carries a PlayStation Move required label.
When the game supports traditional 6-axis / DualShock 3 controls and PlayStation Move controls, it carries a PlayStation Move features or PlayStation Move compatible label.
The PlayStation Move has been generally well received.
Game Informer gave it an 8 out of 10, saying, "The PlayStation Eye and motion controller are a killer combination for accurate and highly responsive motion-based gameplay." And we applaud Sony for getting the hardware right the first time.
Cognitive great its accuracy, design, use of augmented reality and said, the PlayStation Move is an intuitive, natural feeling way to play games, and it brings with it not only a sense of increased immersion to already graphically immersive games, but a new way to play with your reality in a refreshing form of colorful feedback.
IGN gave the Move an 8.5 out of 10, noting that the launch lineup of games for the controller was insufficient, though it's summarized by saying, "At the end of the day, the PlayStation Move has the potential to be the best motion control system on the current crop of consoles."
Joystick praised the Move, saying, "The hardware's great, and I can see it being used in a multitude of really cool ways, but of course it's only as cool as the games that use it, and that the launch lineup was not worth the purchase, though it believed that the Move would be worth the purchase in early 2011 due to a stronger lineup of games such as SOCOM 4, US Navy SEALs, and Killzone 3.
CVG gave the Move an extremely positive review and awarded it 9 out of 10, saying, "Sony's motion control gets beyond being a gimmick. We found ourselves constantly itching for one more go."
The Guardian strongly criticized the Move's launch lineup, though it noted that the hardware was strong and that after playing with the Move it was very hard to go back to the relative inaccuracy of the Wii. The PlayStation Move won the 2010 Popular Science Award for the Most Immersive Game Controller. In October 2010, the PlayStation Move had shipped around 1.5 million units in Europe and 1 million units in North America during its first month of release, figures that Sony felt were selling extremely well at the time.
On 30 November 2010, it was announced that 4.1 million units had been shipped worldwide in the first 2 months since its release.
By June 2011, at E3 2011, Sony announced that the PlayStation Move had sold 8.8 million units.
By November 2012, this figure had grown to 15 million.
In March 2012, Virgil Gar of Sony UK spoke to official PlayStation Magazine UK to acknowledge that the device had not lived up to their expectations in either their target audience or the software support that had been provided for it. PlayStation Move is now being actively used in recreational therapy on children that suffer from obesity.
The Move creates a challenging physical environment for the children.
In one study, recreational therapists utilized PlayStation Move Fitness.
The children chose which activity to do, and then they engaged for a period of approximately 30 minutes.
The recreational therapists monitor the children.
These programs have shown to lower BMI and weight,
Improve cardiovascular endurance,
lead to healthier choices in recreation activities,
improve self-esteem,
and identify the importance of exercise. We will continue more about PlayStation in Part 10, to be continued.